We've been talking about you, Les, and I'll tell you what, having you on the show last week was so huge that we got so much response about the topic of Palm Beach, and that's why we wanted to delve into it deeper and more of the history of Palm Beach. And we were just talking about the Barefoot Mailman. And from what I understand is that you have one of the biggest collections of postcards anywhere.
I was going to say he probably can afford shoes after paying the property taxes.
Well, do you have any postcards that are from that era?
No, well, there's some of the earliest ones that I have. I have a couple of the sticks, and but that was basically the Barefoot Mailman was before. You have to understand, at that point, he was delivering mail by hand. There was such a low amount of mail that it wouldn't have made sense to have postcards then, so they never had any.
Yeah, and he only delivered from 1895 to 1885 to 1893.
Right. And at that point, they really didn't start postcards till about the turn of the century. And again, this was not what you would call the Mecca for tourists at that point.
No, I mean, we talked a little bit about Alligator Joe and, how people came to see him, and that was kind of an attraction at the time.
Yeah, it was. They also had the Garden of Eden.
Yep.
And, at the north end here, there were a number of areas where they had peacocks running around and beautiful specimens of fauna that no longer really exist probably anymore here.
Well, and we were going to talk a little bit more about what's happened as far as the planting of different, trees, plants, flowers. And I know in 1973 they had a historic specimen guide of Palm Beach Island as far as, garden tours. And I think they did it on the first Sunday in March. They would do garden tours.
No, they do that now.
We're still doing those garden tours. Oh, excellent.
First Sunday in March. It's the Garden Club of Palm Beach.
So, Les, tell us about some of these postcards that date back as far as, the old postcards and what they're from.
Well, they're from a number of companies, which is interesting. My dad used to own a postcard company, so I know a little bit about some of the background. Originally, when the postcards were first made, most of them were made in Germany, where they were not U.S. companies. And most of them were black and white, which were either most of them were colored by hand, believe it or not, or colored by some type of process where it was printed over. It wasn't an actual photograph. And it's interesting to see that you'll see some of the same cards with different colors on them because the different companies went and took the same cards and just recolored them with their own logo on it, basically.
Did you ever get any of these from any people that we've been talking about? Any postcards that were sent from or to any of these historical figures of Palm Beach?
No, not really. There's something called the Tropical Postcard Club, which meets in Cypress Creek. It meets down by Pompano, by the Pompano Amphitheater. It meets once a month. And then they have 2 postcard shows a year. And it's Tropical Postcard Club. I don't have their email in front of me, but they have 2 big shows a year, and they have dealers who come in from all over the country, and that's one of the better places to pick up memorabilia. I've gotten books on the breakers and from the Florida East Coast Railroad there, and it's really fascinating. Also, they have a big show in Tampa and one in Orlando, and for anybody who may be listening out there outside of the Palm Beach or the Florida area, if you go onto some websites, I'm sure you can find local postcard clubs, which are all over the country. And it's amazing what you can pick up, not just the postcards, but memorabilia, keys from the old Royal Ponciana Hotel, copies of books, like I say, with the Florida East Coast Railroad, showing all the developments that Flagler had up and down the coast. I find it fascinating.
Well, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the developments that Flagler had, but more importantly, we're getting into, as we're going through the timeline, we're getting more into Meisner, and Addison Meisner coming here because he basically for health reasons, and how he became basically the best known and most discussed living American architect. And, being the visionary behind a lot of the properties in Palm Beach on the island. But what most people don't realize, and we're going to get into what his plan was as far as Meisner's Florida and his building of what is now Boca Raton. And do you have any postcards from the hotels?
I do. I do have some of the hotel postcards. By the way, a little interesting fact, did you ever see the little pet cemetery that Meisner has?
Well, I wanted to bring that up. A lot of people don't know about Johnny Brown. There's the bar now in Delray, Johnny Brown. There's Johnny Brown's bar at the Boca Resort and Spa, and that was his pet monkey. And
he's buried right next to his dog, Laddie.
Right, Laddie and Johnny Brown are buried. If you're having an outdoor meal at Renato's, you can be right in front of where they're buried, correct?
It's called Pizza al Fresco, which is tied into Renato's there, and it's interesting to see. And Meisner lived over there right next to that in what's a 3-story building, and it's recently been totally redone, restored at great expense. And if you ever have a chance, see it. If the owner ever has tours of it, it's really something to see.
How do you find out about those tours? Because, I know a lot of the materials that Meisner used at that particular property date back to the 16th century, and I think he used some materials maybe from shipwrecks. He had a lot of the beams and some of the doors, and I think some of the ceiling pieces that were brought in from Europe and from some of his travels. And thank goodness for historic preservation. And, what Janice is doing and Les, what you're involved in to bring this information to people. So yes, we can let it be and we can see what was going on with yesterday and we can enjoy it today. And, how can they get into those tours at that original Meisner home?
I think the best thing is really, once in a while, I don't know the current owner, but what they do is they'll have a tour for a charity, something in that vein where they'll say that, for a certain attendance fee towards this charity, you can tour the house. And that's, if you ever have the opportunity, it's worth it.
I'd love to do that. And as we're looking at the things in Palm Beach that are on the National Register of Historic Places, obviously Flagler's house, the Whitehall Way, is one of them. And that was put in back in 72. Breakers Hotel was done in 73, along with the Paramount Theater. Mar-a-Lago went in 80. The U.S. Post Office, the main office there on 95 North County Road, went in 83. The William Gray Warden residence went in 84, and that's at 125 Seminole Avenue. The old Daily News building, which is at 204 Brazilian, went in 85.
That's my office building, by the way.
That's his
building. That is your building. I was about ready to say.
I'm sitting with what used to be the O.D. Davis's office right now, looking over Worth Avenue, and looking over South County, and I can see the ocean from here, and I can see my wife going to Worth Avenue and spending money.
Well, a lot of people out there may not know because Palm Beach isn't necessarily a tourist attraction. It's really a destination point for people. But, I always say if you know of Rodeo Drive, you know of Madison Avenue, I think Worth Avenue has something over on both of those places, to tell you the truth. As you walk around and shop, there's nothing like Worth Avenue anywhere on this planet. There really isn't. And, if you want to shop there, you better make sure that you look at the price tags.
It's Worth Avenue. I've been in Beverly Hills and Rodeo Drive lately, and when you go there, you see the Gap has stores, Victoria's Secret. And I'm not knocking those stores, but here they have a little bit different type of store, of boutique type stores, and it's a little different. Also, you've got a different flavor down here with the palm trees and the casual ability to walk around where possibly in New York where it's snowing or it's 100 degrees outside and the humidity in the summer there. It's a little different here. It's a little bit more casual.
Absolutely. But there's a certain attire. It's funny when you think of Palm Beach attire, and there's pictures of John F. Kennedy with, a salmon-colored jacket and khakis and the penny loafers without socks. And it's kind of like there's a Palm Beach attire, and you can shop on Worth Avenue and buy clothes that are indicative to Palm Beach that you really wouldn't see anywhere else, and you probably wouldn't see anybody wearing those clothes anywhere else.
Well, you've got a number of stores here that are not chain stores. You've got a lot of high quality, if you would call them mama papas, like Moss and Hoffman, that have been here for quite a long time. Casatli's has been here, I think, almost 100 years on the Avenue. That's one of the oldest stores on the Avenue.
What store is that?
Excuse me, Casatli's. That's linens and robes, and it's an interesting store.
When I always think of, well, not in Palm Beach, but on Clematis is Pioneer Linens.
This is one that I think is as old, if not older. They've one of the oldest stores here in Palm Beach. It's at least 75 years old. I believe it's older than that.
Well, there's so many things to experience and see in Palm Beach, but the history of what has taken place there is so powerful, and unless you've really been able to capture that as a resident, as a historian, as a collector, and as someone who's been a publisher of information as far as the evidence report and what you've done with the Historic Preservation Foundation.
By the way, today we just sent out, we've just finalized the year-end for 2011 Evans Report, and people can pick it up online on our website, www.lrevanspa.com. It's lrevanspa.com. And we have that's all the year-end figures, and we have an analysis going back for the last 8 years of what the trends were.
Well, the trends have been very consistent. I know we talked a lot about this last week, some of the prices and some of the trends, and what's happened. And we looked at just the house that John Lennon bought for $725,000, that he sold for $3,250,000, that then again sold for $20 million, and another house that I guess is listed for $72 million that was bought for $900,000, in the 80s. But the prices have been consistent. But the most important thing is really the history, the people. And why I have you on the phone, is there any kind, there's so many things that have happened in Palm Beach that are scandalous, I should say, and we don't necessarily talk about. But can you talk, is there anything that you can think of, Les, in your historical data? I know we had the abdicated King of England that came here. Do you have anything that you'd like to share as far as stories like that?
Well, I think I mentioned last time, I alluded to the fact that when John F. Kennedy was here, that actually when Joe Kennedy was here, that Gloria Swanson had a home across from him. You've got the Palm Beach Grill, which was formerly known as O-Bar, which William Kennedy Smith and Teddy Kennedy made famous.
Yes.
Not that long ago.
Unfortunately.
There's been a number of things, whether it's Donald Trump with his extravagance and some of his statements that have been out there, some of the foreclosures, like the Gossman foreclosure, with which Trump ultimately wound up purchasing. There's some things here that are different. This is a different place.
Well, didn't Patty Hearst's mother have her house foreclosed on a couple of years ago?
Yes, she did. You've got Anna Kournikova, who's had relatives here also been involved in certain situations. You've had Roxanne Pulitzer, the widely publicized situation with the heir from Kimberly Clark. That was a long time ago.
Yes.
Not sure if people know about that, but there were references to certain trumpets being used.
Yes, we know about that.
Certain instances. It's a little different here. Let me put it that way. But there also happen to be some very, very good people here. You've got temples, churches. You've got the Fellowship of Christians and Jews. And I think this is more of a community in a lot of ways than a lot of areas. Having just celebrated the 100th anniversary, the centennial, most cities weren't even established 100 years ago. And the number of homes here that are over 75 years have also, blended in with the sense of community. I live in a home that was built in 1921. It's now 91 years old. My office building here was built in 1926, and the architect here was Harvey and Clark, same architect that designed Town Hall here in Palm Beach. And you can go through the list of the people. I think you mentioned Wanamaker last time, Astor, the obviously Flagler, but the people who've lived here in the past, they've made this what it is, which is unusual.
Well, absolutely. And do you know anything about when we had that movie about the King of England, the brother who had the lisp, and his brother who was the king abdicated because he was dating a married woman, and they came to Palm Beach. Do you know that story?
I know a little about it, not much of the details. I know that he went after he was literally ordered out of France after he had abdicated. He went down to the Bahamas, and he was serving there in some diminished capacity that Churchill had him in, and that he used to come up here to escape the Bahamas once in a while.
I think he stayed at the Colony Hotel was where he always stayed. And speaking of that, the last place that I'm showing on the National Historic Register is the old Veneta Hotel, which was listed as the Palm Court Hotel, which is now the Chesterfield.
That's correct.
I have a
beautiful
question.
hotel. Have you ever been to the Leopard Lounge there?
I was about ready to say. I was almost said Zebra Lounge, but it's the Leopard Lounge, you know.
Leopard Lounge.
That's a very interesting little bar
I used to
there.
go to luncheons there once a week. Really, you really feel special when you're there.
Different, yeah.
You do.
No, you really do. When you cross the bridge to go to Palm Beach, the world seems to change before your very eyes. The energy around you, the karma, it changes. And there's a lot that we are wanting to preserve. There's a lot that has been preserved, but there's also been a lot that's lost.
I have that.
Speaking about the Chesterfield, there that what they did, which wasn't preserved, what partially was preserved, they had some interesting paintings in the Leopard Lounge on the ceiling there.
I have a question.
And, you can just leave it to your imagination. There were a number of people frolicking in different positions, and that's been toned down quite a bit.
I have a question. There's the Paramount building, which when I think of it on Palm Beach, I think of the Ziegfeld Follies, and that day. Now I know it's been renovated throughout time. Did they save the murals and the interior to it, or did they gut it, and did we lose all that?
Well, it's now being run by Dwight Stevens, Reverend Dwight Stevens. And he's done a very good job. As a matter of fact, I just helped him in the restoration of they're restoring the original columns on the outside. I believe that was designed by Urban, and it was the architect. And the theater has gone inside. But what they did do, the exterior has been maintained meticulously. The lobby there is like a museum going in there. Reverend Stevens has taken pictures that he's collected from and memorabilia from when the theater was a theater. And it's just amazing to go in and take a look at. Part of it still remains, but the pictures of the stars who were there for the openings, Bob Hope, and there's something coming up on, and I'm just looking at my calendar, he has shows there, movies, they're black and whites usually, of historical natures, and he's got one coming up here. Let's see. It's coming up. Hold on one second, because this should be of interest. It's coming up on April 5th, which is The Rich, Young, and Pretty, which stars Vic Damone. And I haven't talked to Vic yet. He's a good friend of mine, but he's being invited. And Vic, if you're out there listening, you're being invited to come there for the presentation of the film. Again, it's Rich, Young, and Pretty, which was his first film. So they do still show.
What year was that film
They've shown
from?
Gentleman's Agreement. They've shown Gone with the Wind there. A lot of the movies that really, a number of which had their premieres there.
Do you know what year that Rich, Young, and Pretty was filmed?
I'm not sure. I think it was probably in the 50s.
That would be great. April 5th at the Paramount Theater. Rich, Young, and Pretty. And Vic Damone's supposed to come and make an appearance from his
I believe he is.
movie.
I haven't invited him formally. I haven't called him, but we're going to see if we can scare him out there.
Vic, hope you're listening, because we want you to come back.
1951
was when that came out. And if people don't realize, Joseph Urban, who designed the Paramount, was also the designer of Mar-a-Lago.
Right.
That's right.
He did a beautiful job on both.
And
the
the Backing
Paramount
Tennis
building
Club.
is just beautiful to look at.
Well, you know that the Historic Preservation Foundation has over 250 landmark properties in Palm Beach that they've identified. And unfortunately, we've also identified a lot of buildings that are in what we would call memoriam. And the one at 395 North County Road, the Lotus Cottage, the 601 North County Road, 513 North County, the White Sands on Sunset Avenue, 115 Royal Poinciana, 147 Royal Poinciana, just on and on and on. The Breakers Cottages, all gone. All these homes
There's
have been...
still a few Breakers Cottages.
Mm-hmm.
There's still, I think, 3 of them remaining. But you are right. They have lost some, but I think the last few years, the Preservation Foundation with Janice and with Alex, that they've been working along with Jane Day, who's the town expert on this, they've really been doing well towards making sure that the structures that remain and are kept in their basically their original condition, at least on the exterior.
Well, it's very, very...
Go ahead. Thank you, Les.
No, you're Les. Thank you so much. And that's, I told Janice, I said it's very, very important to me to look at the history, to look at the continuum, to look at the lifestyles and what's happening and preserving that. When it's funny, we're doing the TV show, Vanilla Ice Project, which is on HG and DIY TV. And I was talking to Rob last night. He said to mention that the design on the current show that he's doing is really taken from kind of right at the time of the Gilded and the Golden Age, as far as the materials, how he's done, the ceilings and the design, which is really interesting. And he was very excited that we're touching on this because that was his idea on redoing the house that's on the season right now. If you see it on DIY, and it's exciting because a lot of that work is not done anymore, and it's hard to find the craftsmen that know how to use the materials, that know how to make the type of quality, pretty much handcrafted quality designs and architecture, as well as preserving what was done. Because, a lot of this was handed down. It really wasn't documented how it was done.
I'm going to have to get off in just a couple of minutes because I've got people yelling and screaming here on phone calls. But I was going to mention that you're right with a lot of these things that can't be reproduced or now are just starting to be reproduced because of the craftsmanship that people are now rediscovering. But Jim Ponce, he's historical just walking around. I think he's been designated a historical structure. Mm-hmm. But Jim has certain elements in his house, and a number of people have certain things that were taken from the Royal Poinciana when it burnt down, or when the whole building didn't burn down. There were parts that were saved, small parts that were demolished, and things that were saved from it. And there's companies here like Adam and Eve Salvage that have pieces from some of the mansions that have been torn down in the past, where people can get, whether it be fireplace mantels, Pecky cypress wood, even pieces of date pine wood, where they can save things that you just can't get anymore. You can find it if you look hard enough. There are a lot of pieces of Palm Beach all over Palm Beach County.
Where can you find some of these materials?
Well, I know that there's auctions all the time at like Codner Galleries, and there's other auctions where people put up things when they're moving out of a house or they're renovating a house. And they may not like that fireplace. Now, the Preservation Foundation and Historical will deal with the exteriors, but they don't necessarily deal with the interiors. And you get people who just because of their own tastes may differ with what's there, and things are available. If you look at the auctions that they have, or some of the dealers that they have around here, like I say, Codner's, and there are several other places on West Dixie there, where there's a number of antique stores that have pieces of the town of Palm Beach in there.
Well, there's so many artifacts that exist that have been brought in from all over the world that are in these homes, and as the families grow older, as the homes trade to different generations and they like a different style, a lot of these will be replaced with what they like. And as you said, on Dixie, there's There's a lot of the old antique places. You've got Cedric DuPont. I think Cedric has gotten a lot of things out of some of the old Palm Beach mansions as well.
There's a number. Cedric has quite a bit.
And they built
Like
that. He built a whole new location with a very large location full of a lot of artifacts. And and unfortunately, I hate to bring these things up, but with the Madoff situation, and we mentioned the Hearst home going into foreclosure, and a lot of people getting rid of artifacts and things when they found out that their finances weren't what they thought they were because of what happened with Madoff. And then speaking of that, we're going to get back and talk a little bit about Castles in the Sand, Les, and go into some specific places. But I want to talk now. I'm going to let
me for 2 more minutes. Then
you get back.
They're yelling at me here.
Absolutely. But I'm going to get into Addison Meisner, and a lot of people don't know that Addison had a lot of great visions. He designed some of the most amazing homes in the world, but he also went bankrupt. And, we talk about, what happened. I mentioned the Madoff thing, which was a terrible situation. But Addison Meisner, who was the most well-known, most discussed living architect at the time, had a grand plan and ended up going out of business. And he did have a lot of manufacturing facilities. And you talk about things that still exist around Palm Beach or West Palm Beach or in the county. The manufacturing facilities where he did the cast iron and he did the stainless steel pieces, or he did the a lot of the stained glass pieces, a lot of glass work, woodwork, the Pecky cypress, some of the antiques. A lot of those factories still exist. And Janice, you were mentioning earlier how the factories that Meisner used are still there on Georgia Avenue.
He called them factories, but they were actually small mom-and-pop businesses that he started. They were Rich Metals is on Franklin, which is parallel to Georgia Avenue. They produce aluminum now instead of wrought iron, but it looks like wrought iron. They've just they've gone on with what's good now to use that lasts. Wrought iron deteriorates, and you cannot really replace the real wrought iron. Herpel Marble and Columns is on Georgia Avenue, and they carry on the cast stone decorations and tile. In fact, Rick has a love of history that you would not believe. He's just so passionate, and he knows Meisner history. He's been a collector of artifacts from some of the destroyed mansions as well. So he is an excellent resource when it comes to that and reproducing pieces that have been lost. He's a craftsman in his own right to reproduce these pieces. Wilhelm's Rattan they still make their own handmade rattan furniture.
Wow.
And they're also on Georgia. There's a whole collection of them that still exist that are craftsmen in their own rights, and they do produce very well products comparable to the craftsmen of the early days.
Those are the same buildings that Meisner had. So the buildings are still intact.
Most of them are. There's probably several more as well, like the woodworking.
That would be a really neat thing to see. You see how the homes are built, but you want to know where the materials are made that go into these homes. And to me, that's almost more interesting than the final product because, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You see all these pieces laid out, and then you see the final product. But how do you lay out all those pieces? And there they are. There are the factories. And, we're going to, Les, we really appreciate you being on here. We're going to get back and talk about these castles in the sand. And we're going to talk about what Meisner had planned in Boca and his grand vision, Meisner's dream, the downtown architectural plan of Meisner in Boca. So, Les, thank you so much for being on again.
And Janice worked with me on a number of the things that we did with polyurl. And
I brought your book with me, Les. I brought our postcard book. It's here.
Yes, and Janice was very helpful. And Janice, I've got some more cards for you next time you want them, and they're all available at the Preservation Foundation there, and which is a wealth of knowledge. And I think that's one of the most outstanding institutions that there is in Palm Beach, and that people really should see it. It's a gem. I don't know that there's many preservation foundations like this anywhere in the country.
Thank you, Les.
Well, there's not much in the world to have a preservation foundation like what we have to preserve here. And thank goodness for Janice. Thank goodness for this foundation, because we need to save this. And I'm going to talk a little bit about something that we learn from when we don't save things, from when I was in Washington. And
okay, well, I'm going to.
we'll talk about that later.
I'm going to try to get
you,
off
Les.
here before they pull me.
Okay,
Thanks so much,
you,
everybody.
Les.
Everybody,
See you around town, Les.
check out the new Evans report, everybody. Les, thank you so much for being on Rock and Roll Real Estate with Steve Bate again.